Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This week, we'll be talking Super Bowl, obviously, Club World Cup, UCL, CCL, any other L's out there, Ronaldo, Anna, Bielsa, VAR, U.S. men's national team ceiling, love, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, is my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. How are you, Mosse, on this Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day of the year 2022?
Doing well. I am trying to figure out, are you an old school guy? So did you prefer Dre and Snoop or Mary J. Blige, or did you prefer Kendrick Lamar, being from Detroit, perhaps Eminem? Who was your favorite performer in what is being hailed as one of the great Super Bowl halftime shows ever?
All right, so we're going to get into this right away, right? We're not going to do a whole lot of things that we have watched. I do have one thing I want to mention, but I'll do that after this. Let's get right into the Super Bowl, okay, in general. And should we start at the halftime thing? So you watched it, right? I watched it, and I'm going to get into the whole thing with my wife and pay that off here for a second. But let's start with the actual show, right? We were told in no uncertain terms at every opportunity by the broadcast that this was going to be the best halftime show in history. Okay, so it's already there and written in stone. And look, we all work in the industry. If we're not excited about something, then why should the viewer be excited? I get that, totally understand that. But I think you got to kind of wait until it actually happens before saying it. It was fine. Okay. I mean, look, you're never, ever going to please everybody. The NFL as an audience, it spans all sorts of demographics. It spans all sorts of spectrums out there when it comes to who the fans are out there. And there's no possible way for you to have a halftime show that appeases everybody out there. Is this my cup of tea in terms of the music? It wasn't at the time, and it certainly isn't now. I totally get the nostalgia, especially for a generation that grew up in that time. And we're all informed oftentimes by the teens into the 20s when it comes to our music, and that's our wheelhouse. So I get that people were going gaga over this halftime show. I enjoyed it. But I know those songs because they were ubiquitous at the time, and I heard them. It didn't trigger in me what it obviously triggered in a lot of people that were watching. If I had to pick my best performer there, it would probably be the Kendrick guy. What's his
Kendrick Lamar, very talented.
Kendrick Lamar. I liked his performance. I couldn't understand many of the words, but I liked his performance. I know I'm sounding so old and grumpy old man here, but and then, the Eminem song is a classic because it's a great song. It's got a great guitar riff. Okay, by the way, the music of that song is classic and iconic, and that's why it's a great song, because it was well written and it's memorable. As were the other ones, like I said. But yeah, it was okay. It was fun to watch, but I didn't leave it the way that I left the Prince performance or something like that. It's not even on the same level. It's not even on the same level. And again, don't take this the wrong way. What all these performers have done and continue to do, incredible artistry, incredible skill, incredible craft, and they deserve all of the money and the kudos that they get. But relative to a Prince or a U2 or something like that, in my estimation, again, this is all subjective. This is what we deal with on the pod, is subjective type of analysis. They can't hold a candle.
Fair enough.
Okay, what about you? Were you moved by it? There were people that I'm sure were dancing and crying and saying this is the best thing that they've ever seen.
Yeah, it hit my sweet spot in terms of my musical interest. I could have done without 50 Cent. He is my least favorite rapper. It's unfair to say that any one rapper killed hip hop, but to the extent that there was one for me, it was 50 Cent. I've never been a fan of his. I know my former radio producer, Andrew Williams, loves him and is constantly tweeting about him. Andrew Williams is a fool for that. 50 Cent is one of the worst lyricists that's ever been allowed in a booth.
Whoa.
And
wow.
To me, his presence there really, all the other guys are great artists, geniuses.
This Mr. Cent, though, he you have to be careful when you say mean things about him, okay? As many artists do, he's got a past there, and he can get very angry about things.
Although he's put on a few pounds, so I don't think he could catch up to me if he was chasing after me.
I was worried for him because he started off upside down there. And, you know, I mean, just for someone in normal physical fitness, it's difficult to, you know, get out of that posture when you are upside down. So I'm sure he had handlers and stuff like that. So.
Mary J is a queen. I've seen her live. I saw her at the Hollywood Bowl with Nas. They did a joint concert, Nas being my favorite rapper.
Right. We all know that.
Dre and Snoop. I mean, Dre never ages. It's amazing. I mean, he still got it. And then Eminem, as you mentioned. So, and Kendrick. So, yeah, I thought overall it was terrific.
And, you know, the whole thing that inevitably comes up with these big shows is the, you know, the lip syncing type of thing. You know, there's a difference in terms of lip syncing where you actually turn the lead singer's mic off and you don't hear anything that he or she is saying, and that they are lip syncing to a track that's playing underneath. There's a difference between that and them with their microphone on and singing over tracks that are already there, which oftentimes we saw that last night. You saw whether it was Eminem, whether it was 50 Cent. So that's a little different. Is it cheating? In this day and age, it's not cheating anymore. Nobody cares anymore what's going on. But when somebody comes out and actually sings with and plays a guitar, and it's raw and it's human and it's there, and that type of performance, forgive me if I believe that is more valuable, all right, and that is more worthy of praise than somebody comes out that's singing over massive amounts of backing tracks to bolster their vocals.
And I'm sure this went over your head, but when Dr. Dre got on the piano, he did play a few notes from a famous Tupac song, I Ain't Mad At Ya. So for hip-hop fans, that was considered a moment as well, something of a tribute for the late, great Tupac.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I loved that it celebrated, obviously, you know, because it's been in Los Angeles, and it celebrated the incredible culture that birthed not just these, you know, these great artists, but birthed this type of music. And again, there are people out there that say this will be the best that they have ever seen because it's in their wheelhouse. If Rat had performed, I would be sitting here with tears streaming down my face saying that is the greatest performance ever at a halftime show. So we all have our bands that touch us in different ways. So it was all in all, though, it was entertaining. I thought it was entertaining from where I was sitting on my couch. And I know from speaking to my wife, and we'll get to that here in a second, that it was also entertaining actually in the stadium.
No Logic, so Luis Aguilar was a bit disappointed by that. You know,
I have no idea who Logic is.
Remember he said that was his first concert.
Oh, that's right, yes. So Logic didn't make the cut in terms of seminal and iconic performance from that era to be on display.
As for the game,
yes,
congratulations to former Detroit Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford. You saw his family there, the wife, the daughters, everybody very happy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in that famous scene from Officer and Gentleman, well, you probably don't know, where, you know, her friend is happy in that she stands up and claps and cheers her friend for getting carried off into the sunset by her boyfriend. And living a fairy tale life. You know, that's kind of how we are in Detroit when it comes to Stafford. Yes, we are happy for him, but the happy it's a very different type of happy than truly and genuinely being happy for someone's success after all of it wasn't failure, but futility when it comes to Detroit. That he had to leave Detroit in order to have this moment, that's great, but it doesn't. I think people are trying to say it makes us feel better than it actually does, and it doesn't. It doesn't. The actual game, it was closer than people thought, I think, and both teams played well. The running game was not happening for either team. That's my critical analysis of the situation. Or you could actually look at the other way and say the defensive lines on both teams were very, very good at shutting down the running game.
Yeah, it came down to the wire. I did not love that holding penalty on Cincinnati at the very end there, so I think they did have a bit of a gripe.
Well, did you like the
now, you could argue that was a makeup call because of that. Absolutely.
I mean, VAR solves that in a second. I mean, every soccer player was looking and saying, well, he grabbed his face mask. It's right there. Just go to the VAR thing and solve it when we're done, and that doesn't count. So it all equals.
But I tell you, LA is the new Boston.
Why is that?
Boston had this period of time where their sports teams won a zillion championships, and now it's LA. In the last couple of years, we've had the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Rams.
Right. And the Galaxy and LAFC can't make the playoffs. So, you know, they better get their act together when it comes to LA. They better bring it.
The LA Rams, I'm trying to figure out where they fit into the sporting landscape here. It feels some of the fandom feels a bit inauthentic. They've been back in LA for like 5 minutes, and all of a sudden they have all these diehard fans. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how Luis Aguilar feels about that one.
Mosse, we live in Los Angeles, okay? Our inauthentic is very, very loosey-goosey, shall we say. All right? To call us fair weather, look, it's not a team that permeates through the culture and people, live and die by it. But it was LA, and in LA, if something LA happens that's good, people are going to celebrate it. And, people did fun things. People did stupid things, I'm sure, last night. But, congratulations to the Rams of Los Angeles, right? And to Stan Kroenke, the owner of the stadium and of the team, and a soccer person.
Well, Arsenal fans are hoping that some of that success translates over. But yeah, I mentioned the Lakers. LeBron James was at the game, as was Alex Morgan.
I saw that, yes.
They were both featured in commercials. What about commercials? Anyone that really grabbed
None of them. The crypto part of the world that we have evidently found ourselves in was on full display. I mean, the amount of crypto commercials, the amount of commercials that you had no idea what the hell it was for until the tag at the end was pretty amazing. I did not laugh out loud with a belly type of laugh, any of them. I also, there weren't the epic type of tear-jerker, sweeping type of commercials that we have seen at times in the past. I think everybody kind of went for the comedic, ironic, wink-wink type of commercials when it comes to it. Yeah, I didn't think, and I went through it this morning and kind of, it's amazing when you go on and you're searching for the commercials and you click on the link and you watch a commercial to then watch a commercial. So it's crazy. But yeah, nothing really stood out to me when it comes to commercials. Anything for you?
Well, for those of us that actually enjoyed this television program, the Meadow and AJ Soprano one was pretty cool. But you, of course, think that Sopranos is the biggest overrated piece of crap you've ever seen in your life.
I would. It pales in comparison to, I don't know. Yes, you had Larry David, so it pales in comparison to that. Hell, it compares in comparison to something like The Cable Guy or something like that. So, yeah, that did not float my boat. Okay, so we mentioned last week that my situation with my wife, and for those that didn't listen, my wife at the end of the regular season of the NFL, she's a big NFL fan. She had this moment of awe when she believed that Cincinnati was going to win the Super Bowl, and she put money down. At that point, it was plus $2,800. So you put $100 down and you win $2,800. Because nobody believed that this would happen. Looking back on it, it was amazing that she had this epiphany and vision of what was going to happen. So I was trying for the last couple of weeks to get her to kind of live out the final part of this incredible ride that she has had with this, and she has no connection to Cincinnati. Okay, it was just one of the things. I had been, tapping into all of my resources out there to try to get some Super Bowl tickets. And as everybody knows, these are not easy to come by, and they are certainly not inexpensive. And I was ready to plop down the whatever thousands of dollars. You only live once. It's a bucket list type of thing. I had gone to a Super Bowl over 10 years ago, and she elected at that point not to go, and she's always kicked herself for not doing that. So this would be a good thing. I ended up having a couple different options that all cost around the same amount of money, and like I said, it was in the multiple thousands of dollars range. And I finally just said, all right, I'm going to go with this one, and I gave the check, and we were off to the races. The day before the Super Bowl, I get a call from my agent who says, I got a couple tickets, all right? And I said, well, it's okay. And I already went this way, and it's all kind of ending up costing the same. He says, no, I got a couple of tickets for you that aren't going to cost you anything. So now, oh my goodness. So I said, hold on. So I hung up, I called the people, and I said, listen, I know I gave you the check and everything, but I have the opportunity to get these 2 tickets, and they're not going to cost me anything. Wonderful, wonderful woman. She was like, that is awesome news. That's great for you. I'm going to tear up the check. So that I was thankful that the check had not been cashed yet, although I probably could have sold them on or done whatever. But I ended up getting a couple of tickets. And look, I will readily admit my privilege and my opportunity and the fact that I have people to go to and connections out there. I don't do it often, but in this case, I felt like I needed to do it. And so the good people at Gatorade over there were able to help me out. So thank you to the good people at Gatorade for giving me, not me, but giving my wife. And they learned of the story and what was going on. And they found it in their hearts to do that. So if you like Gatorade, drink it. If you don't like Gatorade, you don't have to drink it. But thank you, Gatorade, for doing that. So they went. Obviously, Cincinnati didn't end up winning, but they had a wonderful, wonderful time. It was an incredible affair. And that was the first time that they had been to that SoFi Stadium, which evidently is incredible. I will tell you that there were FIFA people at the game, and they are thinking about that stadium relative to the 2026 World Cup. There are some issues when it comes to size, but where there is a will, there is a way, and things can be solved, especially if that way involves money.
When they showed all the different celebrities there, Ben and J-Lo, Charlize Theron, they could have shown, Lexi Lalas' wife.
Exactly. Hello, right? I mean, they seem to show everybody else. My favorite part of the broadcast was when who are the people that broadcast the voices, the curmudgeon guys there? Who are the two voices that are broadcasting the actual game?
Al Michaels and Collinsworth.
Yes. So Al Michaels, or it might have been Collinsworth, but one of them, they showed Emmett Smith from the Cowboys of Dallas, right?
Sure, yeah.
Legendary. After they had shown all these other Hollywood people, and I think he said, "That's my kind of celebrity," or something like that. That was wonderful. I enjoyed that.
And when they showed Alex Morgan, Al Michaels goes, "Someone who scored 115 goals," and Collinsworth had like nothing to add. He's just like, "Yeah, that's something."
That's something. It's just read the card. Read the card. Oh well. So all in all, an interesting, I think, fun Super Bowl that comes to an end, and so does the, and so my wife didn't win the $2,800 that she would have won, or the plus 2,800. But what she has done and learned about doing over the course of this is when you do put a bet like this, you have the opportunity to hedge. And so she hedged on the other side. So at the very least, she could come out with something and certainly not lose any money. So she hedged on the other side. But it was a hell of a ride. It was a hell of a ride for her. More importantly, it was a hell of a ride for Cincinnati. So congratulations to the Bengals on an incredibly successful season. And obviously, congratulations to the Rams on the Super Bowl champs. Are you the 2022 Super Bowl champions, or are you the 2021 Super Bowl champions? How's that happen?
It's tricky. It's a 21 season, so I would say they were the 2021 NFL champions. But yeah, the Super Bowl occurred.
But it's the 2022 Super Bowl. It's crazy. All right. We done talking about this?
Yes.
All right. You ready to light this candle?
Let's do it.
All right, let's jump right into it because there was plenty of kicking of the ball going on all over the world. Where do you want to start? You want to start Club World Cup?
It's interesting. Anyone that's listened to this podcast the last couple of weeks and even in previous years during this time knows that the Club World Cup is usually a bit of a throwaway that the producer puts somewhere in there in the rundown to indulge me. I riff on it for a couple of minutes and then we move on because there's never an MLS team and the European side wins it every year. So there's not that much to talk about. But Christian Pulisic's involvement this year gave it some juice. You were texting me during the final. People were tweeting at me. And so in speaking to Luis Aguilar yesterday when he was putting together the rundown, I said, I think this is lead the pod worthy. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Chelsea defeated Palmeiras 2-1 in extra time in the Club World Cup final with Christian Pulisic prominently involved. Why don't we start there? Because this narrative could have been very different. He didn't play 1 minute in the semifinal against Al Hilal, which had U.S. Soccer Twitter in an uproar. And then the lineup comes out for the final. He's not in it, even though Mason Mount was clearly not 100%. So folks were annoyed about that. I saw a lot of tweets Saturday morning. Enough of this. He needs to get out of there. And then lo and behold, Mason Mount has to come off. Pulisic comes on minute 30, plays the rest of the game, which goes into extra time. So he spends 90 minutes on the field. I thought was very good, super active, more central than we're used to seeing, floating in those pockets behind Lukaku. And Chelsea end up winning. So instead, it becomes a weekend to celebrate Christian Pulisic, who last year already became the first American to play in and win a UEFA Champions League final. Now he becomes the first American to play in and win a Club World Cup final. Our good friend Jovan Karofsky did play in a previous iteration of this competition, the 1997 Intercontinental Cup. He came on for the last 10 minutes for Dortmund in their 2-0 win over another Brazilian side, Cruzeiro. But this is all about Christian Pulisic, who is now a world champion at the club level. Your thoughts?
Well, first off, how is it possible that after he was, after United States Soccer Federation tried to kill him and his teammates and the opposition in Honduras in that frigid situation, that he was able to recover physically and mentally to perform in a completely different type of environment? It's amazing how he was able to do that, number one. Number two, that he is a substitute for Chelsea and that he is not Tuchel's cup of tea should come as no surprise to anyone. And the reason why he was on the field, to your point, was because there was an injury. Now, even Tuchel, who might not particularly value Christian Pulisic in the way that I would or you would or others would, he recognizes that it's still a good player that he can put on the field and is going to do a job. And that's exactly what happened. And so I'm happy that Christian Pulisic got on the field. How it happened really doesn't matter to me. That he was on the field and that he was once again able to be in that position when all is said and done of raising another trophy for a very, very good team and again adding to his legacy. That's great. That's great. That's great for him. But we all look at Christian Pulisic. We all look at Christian Pulisic relative to the men's national team. And I guess we broaden it out in terms of what it means for American soccer. Is this going to fundamentally change how people view Christian Pulisic? No. Is this going to fundamentally change how people view American soccer players? No. But it's a good thing, it's a good moment for him, and I'm glad that it happened. But what the Club World Cup means is very different in different areas of the world.
We'll circle back to that, but to stay on Pulisic, this performance came on the heels of a fascinating interview he gave to ESPN FC from Abu Dhabi, in which he confessed that he has struggled to live up to the high standards that have been set for him, and he does feel like at times he does have to be the quote-unquote savior of American soccer. And yet he also said he's starting to realize that maybe that's not the case because of some of the other good players the U.S. now has around him. What did you make of that interview? How did that hit you? Do you have any sympathy for him, or...
That's what I talked about. I mean, we came on the air in Minnesota and I was talking about how he doesn't need to be the savior. Now that he thinks he does, I'm glad that he has identified that. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And that he is now talking about it after not playing particularly well. That's interesting to me. But I think it's natural. I think it's natural for Christian Pulisic. The pressure, I mean, he may or may not feel he has pressure. I mean, if he does feel he has pressure, where's that pressure coming from other than himself, right? And that's Greg Berhalter's job when it comes to the national team, of being able to get ahead of that, because this should have been something that people would have been able to anticipate. And you should have been able, at the first sign that he was doing things that he shouldn't be doing, and trying to push things in moments where he shouldn't be pushing, you got to get to him and say, hey, you don't need to do that. Nobody's asking you to do that. And his teammates also need to do that. Having said that, the responsibility ultimately is Christian Pulisic. And so now if you have identified the problem, fine, fix it. All right? Now you've become incredibly public about the way that you are talking about this problem. Great, wonderful. It's problem. I'm calling it a problem. It's really not a problem relative to everybody else in the world. And by the way, every other soccer player there. But if you feel that this is what you've been doing and this is what has been hurting you in terms of your performance, fine, fix it. Go ahead and fix it. You've identified the problem. And I hope that he does. We got this next window coming up. And as I said, when we were talking about the game in Minnesota, I came on the air. I said, you don't need to be the star. You don't need to carry this team. As a matter of fact, your teammates are carrying you right now. So fine, just go out there and be good. You don't have to be great, just be good. And if some light has finally clicked on in Christian Pulisic's brain that he's pushing too hard and he's trying to be something that he doesn't need to be, great. I get it. It's a little convenient, but great, I get it. And if this is going to help him play better, wonderful. And I'm happy that he's talking about it. But then everybody, what's the first thing that everybody says? Well, no, we're not asking you to do that, okay? Yeah, we want you to be good, and maybe there's a point where you can be great on a consistent basis, but at the very least, just be good. I don't think that's asking too much from Christian Pulisic. I mean, again, it gets back to we're so worried about tearing players down or hurting players. Every other nation and country out there has these young players that we build up, and some of them live up to the hype and some of them don't. But, we're at a point now where we're going to have more and more of these players and expecting more from them because they have been given so much. I don't think we should apologize for that. And if they can't live up to it, then how much of it is on us for increasing expectations? And I don't think they're unrealistic. And how much is it ultimately on the player for not being able to adapt and to deal with the fact that they are a good player? And with that comes expectation, higher expectation, and much more pressure.
Now, I thought Pulisic was a strong candidate for man of the match in this final. Instead, they gave it to Thiago Silva, who also won player of the tournament, which was interesting after he conceded a needless penalty that could have cost his team dearly. I know he played well otherwise, but it's a little bit like, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Right.
But I don't know if you recall this 2 years ago when Flamengo played Liverpool in the Club World Cup final, which also went into extra time. Liverpool won 1-0 on a goal by Roberto Firmino. I did a whole monologue leading into that game back when Mosse Makes the Case was still a thing on this podcast, talking about how there was this delicious subplot anytime a Brazilian club faced a European side in this competition, in that lots of people in Brazil reject Europe's superiority. They resent the fact that the national team is comprised almost entirely of European-based players. They don't understand why doing well in Europe counts so much more than doing well in Brazil. They don't feel like Brazilian clubs are massive underdogs in these games. They feel like the top Brazilian clubs can go toe-to-toe with European sides. And sure enough, in the days leading up to this final, there were some sectors of the Brazilian media that were bullishly high on Palmeiras. They're going to win. They're the better team. And then the match unfolded the way it did. It did go into extra time. It was competitive. But I did think Chelsea was the better team throughout. How did you see it? I'm curious, as a neutral, watching that game, did you think, sure, Palmeiras, by parking the bus, was able to make it close, but the gulf in class was apparent? Or no, the gap wasn't that big. It actually felt like a really competitive match. How did you see it?
I didn't think it was that big. I thought it was a competitive match. I thought that if you didn't know, who these teams were and all the history, and you didn't know where they were from, and you changed their colors or whatever, I don't think that anybody would have said, "Oh, this is ridiculous in terms of the gulf of talent." So, and that's part of why we look at this tournament as something. And maybe we put too much stock at times in it, but it's the only real chance we get to kind of compare and contrast. Everywhere else, we're just kind of doing it, and we have these evergreen debates of, well, this league is good, or this league is just perceived as good, and the reality is that these players or these teams are just as good, but they don't get as much attention. There's not as much money. There's the world doesn't follow it as much, and so we look to the Club World Cup to kind of give us a more definitive type of assessment of where we are.
But it is 9 straight titles for Europe, 14 of the last 15, and that's led to a growing feeling in Europe that this is a waste of time for them. They have nothing to prove. Mm-hmm. It feels totally disconnected from the rest of the season that's going on. And Craig Burley encapsulated that with a very controversial tweet that's getting a lot of reaction. Let me read it.
Sure.
He had this to say about Chelsea winning. While Chelsea were winning that plastic cup and it was lapped up like a World Cup win, Man City were racking up a 16-point gap on them in a competition that really matters. Let that sink in.
I love Craig. I worked with Craig when he first got to the U.S. When I was at ESPN, and he's continued to grow and do good things over there, and I enjoy listening to him. I don't always agree with him, but that comes with the territory, and I get exactly what he's saying. But you know what this is? This is right back into all the let them eat cake, all that elitist snobbery that exists. At least he's saying the quiet part out loud, right? And this is the attitude that permeates a lot of not just the English culture. I mean, the English soccer culture is the greatest purveyors of this, right? But then it also is relative to Europe in general. And if that's the case, then why should Europe participate in World Cups? Because they've dominated when it comes to winning World Cups, and all of the money and all of the tension that exists in these clubs. So I get what he is trying to say there, but again, I think it's okay. Well, not that needing my permission or anything, but I think it's fine to celebrate something like this. I think I think the Club World Cup still needs tweaking, and I think it certainly could be something more. But even if it's more, I'm not sure that what Craig is saying and his attitude and others' attitudes necessarily changes.
Which leads into the next point. There's a very good chance that what we just saw was the last edition of the tournament as we know it, because your good friend Gianni Infantino is cooking up this expanded 24-team Club World Cup, which would occur every 4 years. He still has to get UEFA to sign off on it, so it's not a done deal yet. And it's been interesting to see the reaction. Lots of people, including Grant Wall, saying, FIFA have lots of bad ideas, but this is a good one. I happen to think this one is just as bad as all the other ones. And I've explained why before. I'll reiterate. First off, just the notion of a club competition every 4 years is weird to me. Club football doesn't operate on a 4-year cycle. If we're going to crown champions of each of the different regions every year, it's weird to me that then just once every 4 years, we're going to get everybody together to play some sort of world tournament. But the bigger issue is the one we just discussed. Any sort of global club competition you're cooking up, you're going to run into the fact that European clubs are vastly superior to the rest of the world. And despite the fact that European clubs have won the last 9 editions of this Club World Cup and 14 in the last 15, I actually still think that the way it is now allows for the greatest possibility of somebody else winning it. There have been some non-European champions. We just had a final go into extra time. 2 years ago, Flamengo took Liverpool to extra time. In 2016, Kashima Antlers took Real Madrid to extra time. And the way it is now, all it takes is one European club having one bad day, and boom, somebody else has won it. And what they're cooking up, again, if you read the fine print here, is it would be a 24-team tournament with 8 European clubs involved. They would have 8 groups of 3, with the European clubs being the seeded team in each of the groups. And doing it that way, there's no chance in hell that a non-European club is ever going to win it. More than likely, you're going to have like 7 of the 8 quarterfinalists be Europeans. Law of averages, maybe one will screw up. You're going to end up with all European semifinals, all European finals. And to me, it's going to feel even way more tedious than it does now. That to me is my concern with what Gianni Infantino is cooking up. It feels like he's taking what's the biggest issue with the tournament now and undermining it and completely exacerbating it by the format that he's proposing. So nothing's official yet. I'll wait and see when, what exactly the tournament looks like if it does happen. But that's been the proposal that's been floated out there. And I don't know. I have grave concerns about whether it's going to feel even more ridiculous than it does now.
I don't think it matters relative to what Craig Burley is saying. I don't think that the attitude towards this tournament, even if you make it better, and I do think some of the things that they're talking about would make it better. I mean, ultimately, it's who's going to watch it, right? But and the amount of people that are going to watch it. But if the sentiment from Chelsea supporters, and we're just using Chelsea as an example, and with what Craig's talking about there, if the sentiment is that this is unnecessary, and our focus and attention and our pride and our praise is relative to what ultimately happens in the EPL, then it doesn't matter what the structure is. And I get that. I understand the way that, in particular, fans of the EPL can be, just myopic. And this is what we care about. This is ultimately what we are going to be judged on. But in the same breath, people will talk about the treble and the quadruple and the this and that. And ultimately, it is about winning, and it is about winning any type of cup out there. Does one mean more than the other? Yes, but I think the way that Craig was looking at this, I think he was looking down on even his own, if you will, that are daring to celebrate something like this. And it's not as if Tuchel and the Chelsea players, including Christian Pulisic, that they don't have perspective. They don't understand that what they just did was not incredibly great relative to other trophies that they could win. But it's still, they're getting their ass on a plane. They're going to this tournament. They don't make the rules. They got the job done. And at the end, they were there with the confetti and the trophy for yet another time. And not for nothing, but Tuchel hasn't been there very long. And the dude just is winning silverware. And that is oftentimes, when all is said and done, what people point to, including the people that may poo-poo this, will always say, we won silverware. We were there. We had that moment to celebrate.
And it's funny, to go back to my previous point, MLS folk, like there's this guy MLS Buzz on Twitter who I like, but he's touting this new 2014 version. And it's just so transparent that it's because MLS clubs aren't getting into this thing now, and they would presumably be given spots in that 2014 tournament. And so he has to pretend like he thinks it's a good idea in general, reverse engineer some take about it when it really just boils down to, I'm not seeing MLS teams in this now, and they would be in this other thing. So I'm happy that this new thing is occurring.
So
everybody's
you're ridiculing him for having the opinion that the opportunity to advance, the opportunity to be successful, the opportunity to grow, okay, is being given to more people, right? Is that it? Let them eat cake. Again, Mosse. Et tu? Really? Again?
Well, this actually segues very nicely to our CONCACAF Champions League discussion, if you want to transition.
All right, let's go.
Right now, MLS teams do have a path towards the Club World Cup. They just haven't been taking it, which would be winning CCL. And
just so you know, before it was called CONCACAF Champions League in the other form, we had the opportunity. We won it. I was part of that team, and we didn't get to go to the Club World Cup in that year.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make a joke that I was going to say the last MLS team to be CONCACAF champions was the LA Galaxy with Greg Vanny anchoring the back line. I forget who his center back partner was. I had that joke ready to go.
Exactly. I know. I stepped all over it. I'm sorry.
But So it's unclear what the future of the Club World Cup is and what it would mean to win the CONCACAF Champions League this year. But nevertheless, even just for bragging rights within CONCACAF, MLS is dying to finally win this competition. And it gets underway this week, the round of 16. I have to say, I know we say this every year, but looking at which MLS clubs are in it, looking at which Liga MX clubs are in it, and the way the bracket shook out, I think there's a real chance. I like the fact that this juggernaut of a Seattle team, adding Albert Rusnak, the defending MLS champions NYCFC, and then Colorado are all on one side of the bracket, which only contains one Mexican club, León. So I really think there's a strong chance an MLS team comes out of that side of the bracket, which would then set up a final with, we'll see who. On the other side of the bracket, you have two MLS clubs in New England, very good, and Montreal. That's the one MLS Liga MX matchup in the round of 16. Montreal faces Santos Laguna. And so here we are, another CCL upon us. The Mexican clubs are Cruz Azul, Pumas, Santos Laguna, and León. So there's no Monterrey, there's no Tigres, no Club America. So what do you think as we enter another season of this competition?
I mean, we've been let down before. And so if it were to happen again, it would not necessarily be a surprise because I'm not sure fundamentally things have changed to the extent where it is reflected in the scores. But to your point, brackets are important and pathways to success are important. And we don't, sometimes from year to year, we know in particular when it comes to Major League Soccer, things can change drastically. Your fortunes can change. You can go from worst to first, and you can go from first to worst. I don't necessarily see these teams doing that, but we don't know ultimately what is going to show up when it comes to, I mean, Seattle has had a consistency. NYCFC has not had a consistency, but they are a defending champs, and they're still going through negotiations right now, and still things are happening. So the team that shows up at the beginning of this tournament might be very different than the team that shows up behind it. I'm going to be interested to see New England because this is the new England and what they look like. We know that they've already lost some players in terms of Tajon Buchanan and that kind of stuff, and we know Matt Turner is going to leave mid-season. So what New England does to possibly kick on and be something special. By the way, this Jozy Altidore to New England situation. How many games do you ultimately think Jozy Altidore plays in the year 2022?
You're saying more because of injury, or?
Yeah. I mean, he hasn't played a whole lot. He's been incredibly injured over the last couple of years. What's the over-under? There you go. Like the betting reference. What's the over-under on games played?
I'm going to say he stays healthy and has a productive season for them.
That's 10, 11 games? What are we looking at here? 12 games, 15 games? All right. If I put the over-under on 15, are you taking the over or under?
15 MLS games a season that he features in?
Yeah.
I'll go over.
You're going to go over. Over 15 games. Okay. Over-under when it comes to goals scored. Let's just do MLS right now. I'll set it at 7.
7. I'll go just under. He'll have like 6 goals in 16 games, something like that.
Okay, got it. All right, cool, interesting. All right, well, we'll look forward to that. Look, all the Champions League action is happening both overseas in terms of Europe, and we'll be watching that. And then, this is the first opportunity in 2022 we get to see some of these MLS teams as the MLS season is upon us too in a few weeks.
And NYCFC, who we just mentioned, they continue to hold off interest in Valentine Castellanos. Most recently, River Plate put in a pretty big bid, and they turned it down. Palmeiras, who were desperately trying to sign Castellanos before the Club World Cup, they felt like the missing piece to possibly beating Chelsea would have been having a quality center forward, but NYCFC turned down all their offers, so they had to go into this tournament without really an out-and-out center forward, and it proved costly against Chelsea. So he remains with NYCFC. He'll start this CCL campaign with them. We'll see if he lasts through all of 2022 or in that summer window if some European club comes in and it's too good an offer to turn down. But NYCFC made other news. Luis Aguilar, very big on this story. He wanted to make sure he inserted it into the rundown. They have agreed on a sponsorship deal with Dude Wipes. It's a sleeve sponsor. So Sean Johnson will be the big spokesman for it. I know Ian Joy's excited. He's a big fan of this product. What do you make of this?
What is it? What does it do? What is it? Let's look it up together. Here, Dude Wipes. Let's do this right now. Okay, hang on a second. Hang on. This is great podcasting here.
I could tell you, but it's going to be funnier to see.
Dude Wipes. Okay, there they are. Dude Wipes, the official Dude store. Dude Wipes products of flushable wipes for the on-the-go and at-home situations. That's funny. Okay, so you wipe your ass with this, like toilet paper, right? But then you actually put it down, and the thinking is that it's, I'm sure, damp, I guess, and it's better for your butt, right?
Yes.
It's just for dudes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. If people are going to pay money to put a patch on the side of your uniform, people are going to take it. Do you have to be selective? Yes. But we're talking about a sponsorship for NYCFC, a sleeve sponsor right now. I guarantee that we would not be doing this right now if it wasn't relative to what this Dude Wipes evidently is. I'm all for it. I'm all for clean asses, and I'm all for new sponsorship and people looking to something like Major League Soccer and, by association, just the game of soccer in general, as a smart place to put their money. So here's to clean asses going forward, whether it's NYCFC or anybody else when it comes to Major League Soccer.
Next MLS story I'd like to get to.
Okay.
Very quickly to move past this previous one. You've talked about how the way MLS is structured, there's no excuse for an expansion team to not be at least competitive.
Yep.
So Charlotte FC entered the league this year. A lot of excitement.
This is your guy. This is your coach, right?
Yeah, we're going to be there for their home opener.
Yes, we are.
Week 2 against the LA Galaxy, March 5th, I believe. They've already sold like 65,000 tickets for that game. But their head coach, Miguel Angel Ramirez, it's safe to say he's trying to temper expectations. He was asked what the prospects are for this upcoming season, and he said, I don't know if in Spanish this gets bleeped out, but I'll say, estamos jodidos, which essentially means we're screwed. We're
okay.
And so what do you think? A refreshing honesty, but I mean, is there any reason for an MLS team to have that sort of outlook going into the season? It kind of speaks to maybe you didn't do your offseason work correctly, right?
All right, so here's the deal in terms of the scuttlebutt, all right, when it comes to Charlotte FC. And look, we are looking forward to broadcasting that first game and getting an idea of, because you never know until the whistle blows what this is ultimately going to look like, both on the field and around the field. And as you said, they've sold a bunch of tickets, so I think it's going to be a really interesting and fun night. But ultimately, this is about having a quality product to give to the good people of Charlotte. And I will say that when it comes to what Charlotte has done, in terms of the decisions that they have made, in terms of the way that they have gone about doing their job right now, there is a feeling that they have done everything, well, not necessarily everything possible, but in many ways, they have done everything they can to go their own way and to make their own decisions. And while that certainly is admirable from afar, the template and the experience, both good and bad in terms of the results that are out there, make it so if you are ignoring history, if you are ignoring the experience and the lessons learned from other teams in terms of putting together teams and in terms of putting together MLS teams, then it's on you. And so right now, all I'm hearing is that this team on the field is, yes, a work in progress. And it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you're a work in progress. It's one thing to be a work in progress. It's another thing to already put yourself behind the 8 ball when you are starting the season, because you said, we're going to go off and we're going to do this. And while you may be advising us that maybe this is the best way to go, we know best. Fine, fair enough. We'll see when all is said and done. And again, it's not about soft launches anymore. You better have an ability to put together a team that is at least competitive. But if you're not, and if you are another Cincinnati, let's say, that's a problem. Because if you take people's advice and if you try the best laid plans and they don't come to fruition, people are going to be much more liable. It's not that you're not going to come in for criticism, but people are going to be much more liable to not excuse it, but at least understand that, things just didn't go the way that you wanted it to. But if you not just ignore it, but actively say, no, we're going to go in a completely different direction, it damn well better be a success. And you better be competitive right now. And I'm worried about Charlotte right now. But again, I can be proven wrong. And if that happens, I will stand up and I will cheer and I will say, well done, because you did it your way at every turn. And so that's a long way of saying this type of comment from your coach, it's a bad look, man. It's not a good look for a team that is coming into this league. And while it is honest, is it refreshingly honest? No, if I'm a season ticket holder, I don't want my coach believing that. And if that's the case, then why is he believing that? If that's the case, what are we doing behind the scenes that our coach has to come out before the game or before the ball is even kicked and say we are in the right now? All right. If rumors are to be believed, there are no amount of dude wipes that are going to be able to clean up this mess.
And as you mentioned, I like this guy, Miguel Angel Ramirez. He is a Spanish coach who's earned some comparisons to Pep Guardiola. Did a great job with Ecuadorian side Independiente del Valle. Had an unhappy experience in Brazil with Internacional, where he got to coach your boy Johnny Cardoso, but was sacked after 20-something games. I read nothing into that. Brazilians are idiots when it comes to managers. I thought it was a pretty neat hire for MLS to get this guy, and it still might turn out to be, but I don't know. This was a weird interview and didn't fill me with great confidence about this inaugural campaign for them.
Anything else? Thiago Almada?
Yeah, I mean, this has been known for a while. I even alluded to it on last week's pod, but it became official last week that Atlanta United signed this very talented 20-year-old Argentinian player, Thiago Almada, from Vélez Sarsfield. And you look at FC Dallas signing this 19-year-old Argentinian, Alan Velasco from Independiente, the Facundo Torres signing, which I love, Orlando City getting this Uruguayan playmaker who continuing this MLS Peñarol pipeline. Diego Rossi came from there, Brian Rodriguez, now Facundo Torres. Facundo Torres, a guy who was involved in the Copa America last summer that we covered. Very good player. And so it just leads to this larger question. I know I'm going to be asked by our producers to put together a list of best MLS offseason signings. And, what gets you more excited? Is it the Insignes and Shakiris, or is it these younger South American types? Because I would argue it's these sorts of signings that reflect the growth of the league, but there's still a lot of people that it's more the Insigne type moves that get their juices going. So it's sort of an interesting.
Well, if you're doing it before they actually kick the ball, then it does you no good to talk about these signings, because until they come good, they have no. I think they have no case. So for example, if you're promoting or marketing this upcoming season, and I think you're not quite doing your job if you're promoting people that we don't even know yet. They have to kind of become the stars. And so I think it's natural for us to look at the Insigne, to look at the Shaqiri, to look at Douglas Costa, these types of names that are already kind of established as something that excites you now. And then as the season gets going, you might be pleasantly surprised and or out of your mind with excitement when you start seeing some of these other younger, lesser known types of players that come good. And from a business perspective, one is much more valuable than the other.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What was it? 16 million? Is that what the thing was?
Yeah, no, he's a very talented player. You know, Atlanta has become this sort of go-to destination for these young South Americans. Yep. There have been hits, there have been misses. Miguel Almiron, Pity Martinez, Barco. So we'll see how this kid. Yeah.
We'll see if this is the next pass through of a player, and that goes back to Castellanos. Is that as the market starts to heat up, there's going to be points where just because there's a offer doesn't mean that these teams are going to take it, and they are going to hold out for the best possible offer, as they should. We all understand. That, and there's going to be times where it might make you scratch your head, and at times it might even irritate some of the players that are involved. So anyway, anything else MLS wise?
That's it.
All right. I think we should mention, though, not only are we broadcasting the opening weekend of Major League Soccer, we have the following week we're going to Charlotte and we're broadcasting the Charlotte Los Angeles Galaxy. So we'll ultimately see what this Charlotte team looks like on the field. But also, we were talking about CONCACAF Champions League. You can watch the round of 16 on FS2 and Fox Sports Go. So there's a lot of soccer coming up on Fox and all the different Fox platforms that we have out there when it comes to 2022. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look around the rest of the world. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Where do you want to start, Mosse? You want to go over to the Premier League over there in jolly old England?
Yes, and yet again, we lead with Manchester United. I feel like the last 10 podcasts.
If it bleeds, it leads, my friend. They are bleeding.
So they latest result, they drew 1-1 against Southampton. One bit of good news, Sancho scored in this game. He started to play better lately, but Ronaldo did not score.
Sancho? Remember anybody remember laughter? Anybody remember Jadon Sancho when he was just like the best thing on 2 feet and beating everybody in the Bundesliga and taking players on and nobody could stop him, and then he came back home.
Well, but like I say, lately he started to resemble that player more.
All right.
Cristiano Ronaldo did not score. That's now 6 straight games without a goal for him, longest drought since 2009. But the bigger Manchester United story I want to get to, we know you're a fiercely proud American. You're wearing a hat with an American flag. You're very highly attuned to European snobbery towards American soccer. And so this story must have made your blood boil. We've come to find out that Manchester United players, they have issues with Ralph Rangnick and his methods, but also they view Chris Armas as a total joke, have no respect for him. They've been calling him Ted Lasso behind his back.
Wow.
What was your reaction to?
Well, if that's the case, then evidently Ted Lasso is the only human being when it comes to coaching in England that has enabled Jadon Sancho to live up to his potential, right? If Jadon Sancho is actually playing well now, then Ted Lasso is the reason. All right, listen. From the moment that Ted Lasso came on the air, my antenna went up because there is a history out there when it comes to things involving American soccer, where there is the question of, are they laughing with us or are they laughing at us? And sometimes that line is blurred. I think one of the things that people have enjoyed and grasped onto when it comes to Ted Lasso is that it is much more about laughing with us. And we as soccer people can laugh at our craziness and our idiosyncrasies and all of the different things that exist and still be okay with being the butt of the joke every once in a while. And especially as Ted Lasso, the actual character, has evolved and grown and shown that he's so much more than just this, this marketing thing that started a long time ago. And there's so many different layers, and his quality, not just as a coach, but as a human being, has shown through. Being called Ted Lasso has changed. What that means to people has changed over the years. But don't think for a second that the Ted Lasso moniker for someone like Chris Armas, in particular Chris Armas, obviously, is anything but a negative connotation. And is it right? Is it fair? Soccer isn't fair, and life isn't fair. And this was inevitable. You, as any American soccer player, and now we're talking about American soccer coach, will tell you, whether it's Jesse Marsh, whether it's Bob Bradley, or now whether it's Chris Armas, you are going to get the people that look at you first and foremost as an American. And until you work through it and gain and earn their respect, there are going to be the constant, whether to your face or behind your back, jibes. And that's okay. It comes with the territory. Is it fair to Chris Armas in this particular moment? I mean, the team is not doing well, and the fortunes have not necessarily changed with this new leadership. And Ralphie boy over there leading the charge, ultimately, yes, this is his ship, but he also put Chris Armas in this position, knowing that, I mean, when was the last time we talked about an assistant coach relative to an English Premier League? We really don't talk about that a whole lot. But that he is an American, from an American perspective, obviously we talk about it. And yet, and because this Manchester United team has not kicked on in the way people thought, everybody is in for criticism. And in particular, if you're an American as a coach of Manchester United, you are going to come in for particular criticism. Again, not fair, just the way that it is. It doesn't surprise me that this has happened, and it's up to Chris Armas and Ralph to figure this out and work it out. And the only way that perception changes, either internally from the actual players or externally in terms of the way people are looking at it, is winning, baby.
City and Liverpool both won this weekend. City hammered Norwich. Liverpool beat Burnley. I am not one that thinks that it's over. It's 9, and Liverpool have played one fewer game. So if they win that game in hand, it would be 6. So I'm in the minority on that, but I don't think it's over at the top yet. The top 4 race is absolutely wild. Wolves have thrust themselves into this thing by beating Tottenham 2-0 this weekend. Tottenham have lost 3 league games in a row. They're fading. And so you essentially have 5 clubs fighting for one spot. The table's a little screwy because they've all played different number of games, but you have Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham, and Wolves all fighting for 4th place. So that's going to be absolutely crazy down the stretch.
In this musical chairs, when all is said and done, prognosticate, my friend. Where does this ultimately end? Does Arsenal make top 4? They're at 39 points right now. As you mentioned, West Ham sitting in 4th at 41 points. But Arsenal has 3 games in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to exude a little Big 6 bias here and dismiss West Ham and Wolves as possibilities. So to me, it's down to United, Arsenal, or Tottenham. And gun to my head, I'd go United with all their problems. I think they have the best squad out of all those.
Really? Your West Ham fans are not going to be happy with you right there. You're just completely outright dismissing them, although they sit in 4th place right now. And
although they have bigger problems right now, given the recent behavior of one of their center backs.
But, yes. All right. Well, okay, cool. So Arsenal is going to be left on the outside when it comes to Champions League, is what you're saying, in top 4. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So that's it for England. Let's transition to Spain, where Real Madrid was held to a 0-0 draw away to Villarreal. So their gap at the top has been cut to 4 points, Sevilla nipping at their heels. The interesting thing here, and we'll get to Champions League in a second and how that could affect that, is that Gareth Bale started as a center forward in this match.
Who?
Benzema is out injured. Jovic has been a disaster whenever he's played. So Carlo Ancelotti decided to give Gareth Bale a chance at center forward, his first appearance for Real Madrid since August. And guess what? He played pretty well. Even though he didn't score, it was 0-0. The Spanish media was happy with his performance to the point where they said if Benzema isn't fit enough to start against PSG in the Champions League, it will most likely be Gareth Bale starting up front.
So we're surprised that Gareth Bale came into a soccer game and actually did his job. I mean, that's how far he has fallen. All right. Well, congratulations, Mr. Bale, for actually doing what you are paid ridiculous amounts of money to do. And not even doing it at the level of a starter, but just somebody that if there's a problem, we can put you in there and not completely be embarrassed.
A couple of wild games. Atletico Madrid beat Getafe 4-3. This is not the Diego Simeone Atletico we're used to. Their last 3 games, they beat Valencia 3-2, lost to Barcelona 4-2, and now they beat Getafe 4-3. That's 18 goals combined in those 3 games. So they're playing in all these wild shootouts now. They get the victory here.
Do you think he cares?
Yeah, I don't think he could be happy with this type of football. This is not,
really. I mean, you think he's that much of a true believer and ideologue, if you will, about what he wants to do?
No manager is happy with his team conceding 3 goals in a game. I remember Dortmund famously had a Champions League game we did years ago where they won like 8-4. It was some crazy scoreline like that. And Thomas Tuchel afterwards said, as a manager, what you most want is to feel like you're in control of the action. And when a game is 8-4, you feel like as a manager you've lost control. And that's an uncomfortable feeling.
Well, I mean, what about who was that basketball coach that bit the towels all the time, right? Or what, remember the bald guy that bit the towels for Las Vegas?
Jerry Tarkanian?
I don't know.
Wow, what a reference!
Well, wasn't that the run and gun type of thing where they didn't care how many you scored? We were just going to outscore them. So it doesn't that doesn't happen a lot in soccer. We all understand defense wins championships and all that kind of stuff, but. I don't know. And I'm not saying that Simeone's ever going to turn into that right now, but it would be fun if someone just said, you know what? I don't care how many goals we let in. Because you know what? The way we're playing, we're going to let a bunch of goals in. But the way we're playing also means we're going to score a bunch of goals too. And all I care is we score one more than you.
How about you with a UNLV early 90s that was Larry Johnson, Stacey Ogman, Greg Anthony, Anderson.
It might not have been. Weren't they the Running Rebels or whatever?
Yeah. And by the way,
those
were some fine student athletes, really
of course.
Upstanding program.
When they were deciding and picking on where to further their education, they obviously saw this great institution that said, this is a place where not only is going to feed my mind, but it's going to feed my body and the need that I have when it comes to playing basketball and getting paid.
The other crazy game was Espanyol-Barcelona. Barcelona took an early lead through Pedri. Espanyol turned it around. We're actually up 2-1 late, and then Barcelona, Luc de Jong scored a late stoppage time equalizer, so it finished 2-2. I read a really neat story on ESPN FC about Espanyol and what's it like to be that other team in a city, the little brother in a rivalry. And it was kind of interesting them talking about it, how, if you're a kid growing up and you're an Espanyol fan, you sit in this classroom with 20 kids where 19 are Barcelona fans and you're Espanyol, and like what a weird existence that is.
It takes a special type of person, I think. Some of them are born into it and then they have no choice. But I think others gravitate and kind of that punk ethos of, bring it on. I don't care. I will be that one guy in that classroom, and it's not easy.
Yeah, I always think about Clippers fans. Now, more recently, the Lakers have had some lean years, and the Clippers have had some exciting teams, the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin teams, and now Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So it's not that crazy if you're a young person growing up in the last 10 years or so and you choose the Clippers. But there was a period there where, if you're an LA basketball fan, why on earth would you become a Clippers fan?
Right.
And I always, the psychology of that.
Like the stars that were at the Clippers games, you're like, why is he or she doing that? It's
Billy Crystal famously.
Okay, I get it, but right. So anything else?
So great top 4 race in Spain too, with Barcelona and Atletico Madrid both involved, Betis, Villarreal, and others. So something to keep an eye on. Italy has the best title race.
Yep.
Huge game this weekend. Napoli-Inter finished 1-1. Soon to be Toronto FC forward Lorenzo Insigne scored from the penalty spot. For Napoli, Dzeko equalized. Milan capitalized on that. They beat Sampdoria 1-0. So they leapfrog Inter in the table, although they've played one more game. But you see Milan 54, Inter 53, Napoli 52. They're all bunched together there. Napoli trying to win their first Scudetto since Diego Maradona. By the way, I went with Luis Aguilar's numbers there, but I think they're wrong.
Ooh, damn. This is real-time fact-checking.
Yes. Milan 55, Inter 54, Napoli 53. So you were off by 1 on all 3 teams. You shortchanged them of a point. It's funny. I had it in my head correctly. Against my better judgment, I went with Luis on what he put in the rundown.
If you're just listening to this and you're not watching this, to see David Mosse, the savant that he is, and to see the wheels turn and the recognition that there is something wrong on the page is just it is something to behold, my friends. So yes, we all bow to your knowledge and your ability to retain information.
Atalanta Juventus finished 1-1, which, depending on how you look at it, it's either a good result for Juventus because it keeps them in 4th, or a bad result in terms of chasing the leaders? Because there are some now that feel like Juventus deserve to be mentioned in the title race. Others say, no, it's just about top four.
Title race, I don't know. It does. I mean, you pull up this standings, and it could be from the 90s or whatever. It's amazing, to have both of the Milan teams. And I know we were talking about the redheaded stepchild of teams that are in the same city. That's not the case when it comes to Inter and Milan, but to have them going back and forth is amazing.
There were seasons, to your point, in the late 80s where Milan had the three Dutch guys, Van Basten, Gullit, and Rijkaard. Inter had the three German guys, Klinsmann, Mateus, and Bremer. And Napoli, of course, had Maradona, Careca. Sure. And where, those three teams were battling. So you're right, it does have that feel for sure. Germany, Bayern suffer a shock defeat.
Did you see that?
Eric Ronaldo's former club, Bochum. Dortmund take care of Union Berlin, so that takes it back down to 6. I still don't think, but still.
It was one of those weird games. You kept saying, okay, Bayern's not going to figure it out, and they'll come back flying and all that kind of. And it just, they went to the well, and it was just empty. It was not happening for them. And I don't know what you were talking about coaches and what you say after something like that. There's a part of me that says, yeah, you can learn something from this game, and we didn't do this and we didn't do that. And there's part of me that said this was just one of those things where no matter what we did and what we tried, it couldn't happen, and the goals just kept coming in, and on the other side, we couldn't figure it out.
Gio Reyna did not play in this game because of an illness. Dortmund, some interesting transfer news. They are going to sign Niklas Süle on a free transfer this summer. In Germany, these things are announced way ahead of time, which I find so strange. I mean, we all think Mbappe probably already has an agreement with Real Madrid, and he's bending over backwards to deny that because he recognizes it would be incredibly awkward to play a half season with PSG with everybody knowing you're signed and sealed to Real Madrid. Well, in Germany, they think nothing of that. A guy who's starting every week for Bayern comes out publicly and says, yep, I signed with Dortmund. I'll be joining them for next season. To me, it's like you're dating a girl and you tell her, hey, I'm going to leave you for this other girl, but only 6 months from now. In the meantime, we'll keep going out. I mean, I don't know how that's not, but nevertheless, I think it's a great move for Dortmund. Somewhat surprising. His contract was running down with Bayern. They couldn't come into an agreement. He felt disrespected by their offers. And so instead, he could have gone to the Premier League. Clubs like Chelsea were interested. Instead, he chooses to sign with Dortmund, who it looks like are also going to sign this young player from Salzburg, very good, Karim Adeyemi. So Dortmund, who are going to lose Haaland, obviously, this summer, but making some interesting moves otherwise.
But isn't this a kind of a Mats Hummels type of thing where he's outlived his usefulness at the time, and that's what Bayern does. It's like, okay, we can move on from that. I mean, I like Süle, but he's limited, and I think he's going to get more limited as they go on.
Are we still doing the Ricardo Pepi week-to-week thing? He did come on. Augsburg lost to Gladbach. Pepe came on in the second half. They're in 16th place. Is that still appointment viewing for you, or that novelty has worn off?
It's not, unless I get the clarion call that he's starting. I'm not watching.
George Bello did make his debut. He came on for Arminia Bielefeld in their 2-0 defeat over Hoffenheim. I didn't watch this, but by all accounts played pretty well. So another American to keep an eye on there. Finally, we'll end in France because this will segue nicely into the Champions League. PSG beat Rennes 1-0. Mbappe with a late goal assisted by Messi, but another lackluster performance by them. The fans were not happy. They booed. They held banners calling the players overpaid mercenaries. There were protests. So the mood is not great in Paris going into this, I would say, era-defining Champions League tie. I mean, if they, after acquiring Messi, if they go out in the round of 16 this season, then, I mean, they become, kind of a laughingstock.
Yes, they do.
So we will segue to the UEFA Champions League.
Before we do that, Jordan Pifok continues to score.
Yes.
Okay? So I just wanted to mention that because you mentioned Pepe, and obviously we're going to talk a whole lot as we get closer and closer to the next window on who's going to be that person up top. And when it comes to goal scorers, I know it's not all about goal scoring. But at this point, if people are scoring goals, as I said before, anybody with an American passport who qualifies to play for the U.S. men's national.
So you're on the page that he needs to be in the mix.
I'm not just because he's scoring goals where he is doesn't necessarily mean that he is the right person for the job here. But if we were in a different time where there was somebody, then I at this point just bring everybody in.
The U.S.'s center forward situation is so murky that it's even gotten you off your form is fallacy thing a little bit.
Oh, no, form is fallacy. It absolutely is fallacy, but that's why I say he could come in and suck, all right? Just because he's scoring here. But once again, there is such a void when it comes to that position that anybody out there that has any type of proclivity for scoring goals, yeah, bring them in. I mean, you can't do any worse. Or maybe you can. God, famous last words.
So the UEFA Champions League round of 16 gets underway this week. I'm just going to focus on the 4 matchups this week. The glamour tie of this round is PSG Real Madrid. PSG hosts the first leg at the Parc des Princes. So much to get to here. Obviously, the Mbappe situation. I mean, it's so bizarre that he's going to be playing against Real Madrid, and we all know a few months from now he's going to go to Real Madrid. Obviously, Messi, always a big story. He makes his move from Barcelona, and here we go. This is why they got him. Can he come through when it matters, facing his old nemesis, Real Madrid? 2 injury situations to keep an eye on. Karim Benzema, as I mentioned, looks like he's going to travel to Paris, but it's unclear whether he can start. If not, it will likely be Gareth Bale leading the Real Madrid attack. And the other one is Neymar, which I am just so frustrated with this situation. You know, PSG have played 8 Champions League round of 16 games since he got there. He's only featured in 3 of them. And it looks like he'll be in the squad, but unlikely to start. Who knows if he'll even play? And, you know, as he's gotten older, it's taking him longer and longer to get back from these injuries. If you go back to when the injury happened, what the original timetable was, this shouldn't have even been an issue. He should have been back a couple weeks ago, been able to play in a couple of games, get his rhythm, and be very much back in the mix here. Instead, he just barely makes it back where he's going to be available, but hasn't played a game in 2.5 months. So is Pochettino going to throw him into a game like this? A guy that hasn't kicked the ball in 2.5 months. So again, just very frustrating. That
all right. So should we go through these matchups? Again,
just the ones this week. Because
you don't want to do that? Okay. So do the ones this week. All right, go.
So it's PSG Real Madrid. You want a prediction?
What do you got? Yeah.
I think PSG advanced from
really?
Yes.
Well, no, not a bit. Just this game, because.
Well, yeah, I think they win this game and they bring some sort of lead back to Madrid and then get the job done there.
Okay, I think that this has a tie written all over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sporting host Manchester City should be no problem for City. I think they go in there and win. And
I think we're both in agreement there.
Salzburg hosts Bayern Munich. I know people said, "Oh, Bayern lost this week, and it shows they're vulnerable." That is the worst possible thing that could have happened.
Not what you wanted to have happen.
Brendan Aronson will feature for Salzburg, so that's fun. No Alphonso Davies, unfortunately, is still that heart condition that ruled him out of the Canada games as well. But yeah, I think Bayern go in there and take care of business. Okay. The other matchup this week is Inter against Liverpool, which is interesting because I know at the end of the group stage,
in Milan.
So first leg is at the San Siro, yes. I know in Italy they were mortified that Liverpool was able to, at the end of the group stage, send essentially a B team to the San Siro with nothing to play for and beat AC Milan and knock them out of the competition. And it triggered a lot of talk in Italy about, boy, just how big is the gap right now between Serie A and the Premier League. And so that debate occurring, ahead of this tie as well. Inter, I think, are better than AC Milan. They'll put up a better fight against Liverpool, but ultimately, I do think Liverpool are strong favorites here. I'll say they get a draw at the San Siro, and then they'll finish them off.
I'll take Inter to win this, not necessarily in the 2 games, but in this first game, I think they win at home against Liverpool.
No Barella suspended, which is a big miss for Inter. I'm a huge fan of his.
All right, well, we'll talk about the other ones next week. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back, and it's time for Ask Alexi. You send those Ask Alexi questions in on the old social media platforms out there. And you can also call us if you want to, our State of the Union podcast hotline. You know it. You love it. 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. I think we have a bunch of Twitter questions this week, Mosse, right?
Correct. At JML Wilson, he asks, "Hey, Alexi and Mosse, any chance we could see Bielsa in MLS after his time with Leeds comes to an end? Is there a good fit for him in MLS? I think his style of play would translate well."
So his style of play in terms of the chaos theory of just throwing everything and the kitchen sink ahead and the physical requirements of pressing and doing all those different things. Is that what we're talking about here when it comes to Bielsa?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think, would it play? I mean, we've seen, what's the closest we've seen to something that drastic? It would be Almeida, I would think, in San Jose, right? And that has not gone well. I think Bielsa, maybe more so than anybody, would appreciate and respect and relish the opportunity to coach in a league where the haves and the have-nots are not as have-y and have-not-y relative to anybody else in the world. And so I think that would fire him up. I think he would become frustrated at times with some of the rules and restrictions and regulations when it comes to what he can do. So yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of, but as a personality though, I'm not sure that there's some guys that you think I can see him in North America and in the United States, that's be something that he would want to do. I don't feel like he has that burning desire, that wanderlust when it comes to the U.S. in particular.
I'd love to see it. I'm a Bielsa groupie, as you know, so I think it'd be so much fun to have him here. And the franchise I would look at is Atlanta. Tata Martino is a Bielsa disciple. He played for him at Newell's Old Boys in the early 90s. So it's some of the same principles there, which obviously worked and led to an MLS Cup title. And we've talked about, you know, in the context of the Thiago Almada signing, that Atlanta have sort of cultivated this, becoming this go-to destination for South American players. If Bielsa went there, that would even increase. So I don't know. I kind of see a fit there. And then he'd be managing one of the marquee franchises where he could actually.
I would love to see it. I don't know. I mean, he bobs and weaves, so nothing surprises me when it comes to Bielsa.
Yeah, he's stuck around at Leeds longer than I expected. You know, he is a guy that has this reputation that he could show up one day, and if the bathroom isn't to the specifications that he asked for, he could walk out the door. But
I mean, he's eccentric, and part of his eccentricity is what makes him appealing. But I think it can obviously be frustrating. J.M. Wilson also wanted to know if it would be something FC Cincinnati-wise. No, I don't think that is anything that he would be.
Is that J.M. Wilson or is that Luis Aguilar? With the dots that don't have colored in, that's a Luis Aguilar adding something to the question.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, so could he make...
That's why I ignored it, because I thought it was...
Oh, okay, got it. Well, then to Luis, no, I don't see him coming anywhere close to FC Cincinnati.
Thank you, Luis, for that contribution. Next question. At Alan Keane 18 asks, thoughts on the semi-auto VAR used in the Club World Cup. Will it hurt referee jobs if it is fully implemented? Is this a sign of robots taking over the refereeing aspect of the game? We saw this in the Arab Cup. We just saw it in the Club World Cup. Essentially, they have cameras all over the stadium and sensors to monitor player movements. And they're turning off sides where it's something almost like goal line technology, where instantaneously they can measure it and buzz the referee, and it's taking away a lot of the sort of human element of it. And
well, first off, you still need humans in order to assess what is going on with the technical data that you are getting in. But having said that, if I do see a point where it's not that referees become redundant, it's just that the way in which we use human beings actually on the field becomes less and less important. You know, if we can track all of these different things down to the millimeter, and everything within a game is tagged, and so therefore we know where everything is happening, the ball, the actual lines of the field, and then obviously the players out there, then yeah, there's going to come a point where we can get that instantaneous answer that is derived from technology. Now, it has to be read ultimately by a human being, or maybe it doesn't, but in this case, it has to be read. Yeah, I don't think that this is if you are a referee, you're looking at a future where you are no longer involved. But if it's, I mean, so for example, this actual VAR thing, it was designed to make things done faster. So there's not the lag time and there's not the waiting around. And it has to a certain extent. And by the way, in hearing and talking with FIFA, you know, this is something that they want to have ready as soon as possible, because FIFA doesn't want controversy or too much controversy when it comes to some of these decisions. So it would not surprise me in the least if some of this was implemented as soon as this World Cup come November and December. But yeah, I think there will still be a place for the human beings and the arbiters of the game to be in those referee positions.
It's funny with VAR. In most of the world, they've gotten it to the point where the process is fairly quick, and we're just debating whether they got the calls right or not. It's been a while since I've been watching a European game and felt like there was some review that was interminably long, and we're all kind of standing around and wondering what the heck's going on. In South America, every review is like that. It takes like 10 minutes, and they're so used to that it was funny. In the Club World Cup final, both reviews that resulted in penalties, both of which, by the way, I thought were clearly the correct calls. The Thiago Silva one and then Luan in extra time blocking that shot. I mean, the guy ran over there and was back in like 20 seconds.
Right.
And you could see the astonishment of the Brazilian media because they're so used to how long VAR takes in South America. So when the guy first goes over there, it's like, okay, here comes a VAR review, folks. You know, if you need to go to the bathroom or grab a sandwich or something, and then the guy comes right back, they're like, whoa, did he even look?
That's how it's done.
Like that's how it's supposed to work, not how it happened in South America.
All right. And this semi-auto VAR is specific relative to offside, is the way that it looks. And yeah, I mean, if you can implement it and it makes things faster and it makes things clearer, and ultimately the cry for years was, I just want to get the call right. Well, if this helps get the call right and it does it in a timely manner, then I think it's a good thing. And if human beings, which we know are fallible and limited in terms of what they can do, if they can't do that, and we can by using technology, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't necessarily see it as a slippery slope.
And we'll end with a fun one.
Okay.
At Del Rakes 44 asks, what's the ceiling for the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup? Presumably he means the 2022 World Cup. If they qualify, how far could they go? You evidently responded on Twitter. You just said the World Cup.
Yeah.
And Luis Aguilar would like you to expound on that.
So when we do World Cups, and in particular when we do men's World Cups, inevitably the question will come up by people in the game, and then obviously since a lot of people come into the tent that aren't necessarily following the game, the question is, can we win the men's World Cup? And inevitably I will say to someone, yes. And then, once again, inevitably the deluge of, how dare you say that, and you're providing false hope and false expectations, and that's unrealistic. Well, yeah, something that has never been done before to many people is always going to look unrealistic. It's always going to look like you are simply being led by your heart as opposed to your mind and eyes when it comes to something like this. People sometimes forget that we were a handball away from possibly going to a semifinal of a World Cup, and that was back in 2002, 20 years ago. So when, and I'm going to say when, this team qualifies for the World Cup, this particular men's team, especially with all the talent that we have, what is the ceiling? The ceiling is winning a freaking World Cup. That's what everybody is trying to get. Does that mean that it is going to happen? No. Does that mean that I'm going to put all of my money on that happening? No. It would require all sorts of things happening. First, it would require, obviously, the team qualifying. Then, every player to be healthy and everybody to be playing at maximum capacity. And so your Christian Pulisic, hopefully he would have gotten over whatever pressure he feels and is not only playing at a consistently good level, but is playing at a consistently great level. That can certainly happen. A lot of stars have to align. Soccer gods have to smile upon you. And then you got to get a little bit of luck. Every single team that's ever won a World Cup at some point has been in the position to benefit from a red card or a blown call or a ball that ricochets off of somebody's knee or nose or ear or something like that. All of that kind of has to happen. You got to have a good goalkeeper, which we certainly do. So when I say that, it is absolutely ideal and idealistic and thinking of the perfect storm, if you will. And I get that. But there are those, when you say that, within the soccer community, that think that saying that hurts the credibility of me, and then by way of connection, the credibility of American soccer. And I dismiss that. I think that is I think that is wrong. Nothing great has ever been accomplished by setting low expectations. Nothing great has ever been accomplished by not believing that you can't do things that people tell you can't do and that has never been done before. And I know that, again, that sounds Pollyanna, and I know that to a lot of people sounds like I am delusional. But, if this is ever going to happen, it will come because ultimately people believed that they could do something that for now, half a century, more than half a century, we have been told we can't do.
It is, I always say this, it is one of the great paradoxes that soccer is a sport where there's such a randomness to an individual game. And generally, knockout competitions, which the World Cup concludes with a knockout phase, do lend themselves to surprises. And yet there's never been a Cinderella World Cup champion. Only 8 nations have won it. And if you go back, they were all teams that were considered among the favorites going into the tournament. So history tells you that you probably have to establish yourself as one of the top nations first. And then it probably won't even happen the first go around. You need a couple of at-bats where you get close, lose a final, and then eventually you break through. So that would be the only argument against the U.S. I mean, yes, of course, anything can happen in sports. You get the right group, some breaks, but it just hasn't happened in 90 years of this competition. So,
to Del Rakes, who actually asked me this question and, how I had responded on Twitter. And I know it could probably taken as a little flip in terms of my answer there. If he was more, or she, I don't know who this is, but if this person was more asking, what is success for this particular team when it gets to the World Cup? Obviously, you qualify for the World Cup, which, as we said, will be considered an accomplishment and success, but it's nothing that we haven't done before. And so we should not break our arms patting ourselves on the back if and when this team qualifies for the World Cup. Then you get to the World Cup. We've gotten out of the group plenty of times before. And that is the first hurdle and the first qualification that we have for, quote unquote, a successful World Cup. I think ultimately a true success for, if in this case it would be Greg Berhalter and this team, is to not only get out of the group, but to win that round of 16 game, regardless of who the opponent is. And then anything that happens is, I guess, gravy. And so that's my much more unsexy and raw type of assessment of this team, if that's what he was ultimately asking.
There seems to be a bit of a divide. I think most media types have their feet on the ground. They recognize the long-term prospects for this U.S. program are great. The future is bright. They should be excited about all these things that are going on in terms of talent development. But this, in the short term, this 2022 World Cup, it's going to be a young team full of guys playing in their first World Cup. A lot of guys who may not be in great club situations heading into the tournament. So the prospects aren't that great here. While I do come across lots of fans on Twitter that already think 2022, no, this team is going to be super dangerous. And so there's a little bit of a divide there.
Say that, Mosse. A part of me is irritated when you say that, because I think we're selling ourselves short. And again, I know all eyes are kind of to 2026, and understandably so, but 2022 can be something special. And you know this game. Would it be out of the realm of possibility that when all is said and done, what are we at, 22? So 6 years from now, when all is said and done, a little more than 6 years, that we end up looking back and saying, well, the team in 2022 actually did better than the team in 2026. That certainly could happen. I know we're kind of, putting 2026 as the moment when everything comes together, but best laid plans and all, it doesn't always happen like that. So I don't want to let this team off the hook, either individually or collectively, simply because they're young and inexperienced, because we have given more to this generation than any generation in the past. They are more prepared. They have better resources. They are better paid. They have better pathways. They have better opportunities. And with that should come higher expectations. And I think you're dumbing them down. And I think that you're letting them off the hook in the way that you're talking about 2022.
So to bring this podcast full circle, Christian Pulisic has already won one World Cup in 2022, and you think he might win another.
There you go. If he gets his head straight, and I hope that he does. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
All right. Listen. Thank you for sending in those questions. You can do it on Twitter and use that hashtag #AskAlexi, and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all the different platforms that we have out there. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297. That's 657-549-2297. All right, we're coming to the end of the show. We're going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, I will give you my one for the road. All right, we're back. End of the show. I think it's been a pretty good show. If I do say so my damn self, and I do.
Had that one Luis Aguilar Serie A points debacle. That
Well,
was the one blemish.
We move on from that. We are able to adjust. All right, so it's the end of the show, and I give you my one for the road at the end of each and every show. And this week, we are recording this, as we mentioned, on Monday, February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. And I know people look at this day differently. And for some people, it's a moment to celebrate their love for whoever they are with. And that's all fine and well. And there's a lot of people that don't necessarily have people that they are with. And sometimes this day doesn't make them feel great. I want to look at it much more in terms of the love that we have for this game and how we came to love this game. And with all of the ups and the downs relative to this game, I think those of us that are a part of it, certainly if you're listening, I don't want to speak for my friend David Mosse, but I will in this case, in that we love this sport. And something from a young age drew us to this sport and established that love. And for those that have ever been in love with anything or anyone out there, you know that love can both swell your heart and love can break your heart. And yet we need it, we crave it, we look for it. And when it is there, there is nothing else like it. My love for this game started at a young age and being introduced to something and to a sport that I had never experienced before. And, I've talked before about how the unique aspects of this game made me fall in love with it. The autonomy that you have. And while there are coaches and people that and plays and tactics and all that kind of stuff, relative to a lot of other sports, you're left to your own devices when that whistle blows, and you get to do ultimately what you feel is right in that moment. And I loved that part about it. And I've talked about the international aspect of this game and how it spoke to me, and how juggling a ball on my sidewalk in suburban Detroit, that there was somebody on the other side of the world, a boy or a girl, doing the exact same thing. And that type of connection, the social aspects of it. To this day, some of my great friends are people that I met through the game. I've told you about walking down to that sandlot in Athens, Greece, as a redheaded American kid who didn't speak Greek. And it was my introduction from a social perspective into the neighborhood kids and making friends and having that connection with the game. Everybody has different stories as to how and when they came to the game. But ultimately, it hits you and you fall in love with it. And in that moment, you are forever changed. And that love will take all sorts of different pathways and ups and downs and good times and bad times relative to the score, relative to the players, to the wins and losses and the years and the seasons and the cups and the experiences that you have. And there's nothing like it. And I'm thankful that I found it at an early age, but who knows when it ultimately comes to you. And when it does, there's no going back. Mosse, I've talked a lot over the years on this podcast about how the game came to me and how I fell in love with it. You obviously, with your international, your Brazilian background, it's in your blood, but still, there has to be moments that you think back on in your life that have kind of defined you and defined that love that you have for the game.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, got it from my father, and as a kid watching games with him, and then going down. We lived in this condominium, and going down and playing soccer with all the other kids there and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fell in love with it.
It's hard to describe to others why this game, because it can be incredibly frustrating. it can be incredibly maddening. We've talked about at times the chaotic nature of it, and we try so hard to ascribe meaning and X's and O's and data to it, and inevitably it bobs and weaves and goes in directions that we didn't anticipate or predict or expect, and that's part of what makes it such a true love. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about when it comes to the game. I hope that your love of this game continues on. Mosse, you had something to say?
One question before we leave: the Super Bowl tickets, does that count as a Valentine's gift for your wife, or you have to buy or something else?
So
it's a bit of a gray area.
It's funny that you said that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, listen, this was a pretty big thing. I should get, we keep tally, whether we like to admit it or not. We keep track of all this kind of stuff, and that I should get kind of some buffer when it comes to that. And then this is in my now older age. I've recognized that that's a trap, my friend, and that will lead to problems. And so the play here, Mosse, is to follow it up with something else, okay? Because if you really want to be given the benefit of the doubt, if you really want that buffer, all right, don't let your significant other think that good thing that you did in that moment is going to buy you time or should be kind of a get out of jail pass right now. So today I'm going to find some way to add to this, and then I'm golden.
The fact that you got the tickets for free undercuts it being the Valentine's gift.
I like to think of the effort and the time and the resources that I spent at, that's the expense, if you will. At least that's what I am going with. Anything else, Mosse?
That's it.
Oh, my wife's gonna kill me.
We didn't do a TV segment, but I just want to slip this one in there. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel comes back this week. Very excited. February 18th, one of my favorite shows. So we'll talk about it next week when we'll do a full-blown TV segment.
Good thing. Yeah. And I am in the midst of a new Netflix limited series, so we know it starts and finishes, which you know how much I like, called Inventing Anna, which is this it's based on a true story, and it's about this socialite con fraudster of a woman that existed in New York a few years ago, and the story that was true and the story that wasn't true and all that kind of stuff. So far, I'm only a couple of episodes in. I think it has 6 or 7 episodes. Very, very good so far. Anything else, Mosse?
That is it.
All right, listen, thank you for tuning in each and every week here to the State of the Union podcast. Thank you for reviewing and subscribing and sending us your Ask Alexi questions. Thank you for using the hotline. Again, 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297 if you want to do it that way. And I hope that you feel some love, and not just on Monday, because you're listening to this on Tuesday. Anybody can just do it on one day, but spread that love and love the one you're with. And if it's soccer or a person or an animal or whatever, I hope that you have days filled with love going forward. All right. I'm out of here. What about you? Anything else to say?
No.
All right. We'll see you next week. And until then, as always, size the day.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.